Greetings and welcome to another action-packed episode of Resistance Rising with Johnny Cirucci. I am your host, Johnny Cirucci, on the program that brings you the truth that will set you free, news and commentary you will not get anywhere else. And even amongst the very, very small community of public figures that give out what I call the Jesuit red pill, that let you know that Rome is the power behind the curtain, which is the entire purpose of so-called alternative media. Even within that community, I do my best, and I think I succeed in being the foremost outlet to bring you names, places, and dates to give you overwhelming evidence to prove what I say. And it is my hope that involved audience members would take those names, places, and dates and do powerful things with them amongst their friends and family, co-workers, total strangers. So we began a partnership with First Amendment Radio that I'm very excited about, and initiated and inaugurated it with me reading from my first book, Illuminati, Unmasked, and we have made it through to page 75. As I am wont to do, I went down a couple of rabbit holes last time, so let's jump right into it, shall we? Subheading: How to Keep a Secret. Apparently, when the Luciferian elite install a sexual deviant, only they are allowed to disclose the perversion. If you think about it, this is an important side of their blackmail. Quote, "Why should I toe your line when anyone else can do to me what you have threatened?" End quote. After officiating a homosexual wedding, Joan Rivers was interviewed on the run by the Sunday Times, whose reporter asked hopefully, "Will we see the first gay president?" Rivers shot back, "We already have that, Obama." While walking away, she also stated, "Oh, you know Michelle is a tranny." She may have sealed her fate by refusing to apologize or back down. Now, pause. I think I can play that audio for you, regardless of whatever big names claim they have the complete and total copyright. Such a short piece absolutely falls into the category of fair use. And what has spurred me to play it for you is the fact that it has been wiped from the internet, even though it was a big story at the time.
Ms. Rivers, how are you? You made a ton of news officiating the wedding in New York yesterday. Is this like a new cottage career move for you?
I am so excited.
Okay.
And I should do very well because I don't charge.
And do you think that the country will see the United States will see the first gay president or the first woman
we
president?
We already have it with Obama, so let's just calm down.
Got it.
You know Michelle is a
I'm sorry, she's a what?
A transgender. We all know.
Oh my gosh.
Oh gosh. It's okay. She does this.
Now, let me first go ahead and spell out what you're probably so used to, you don't even think about it anymore. Joan Rivers is far left and Jewish. And where does she work? In the so-called entertainment industry. She's being followed by fawning far-left so-called journalists. It's a fantastic faux pas of truth she was captured in, and she paid for it dearly. Back to the text, 2 months later she was dead. The cause of death? During a non-invasive, and by that I mean no cutting of the skin, non-life-threatening medical procedure, something went, quote, terribly wrong, end quote. So wrong, in fact, that at least one doctor is asking if there was malpractice involved. It is interesting to note that of only 3 people that she banned from her funeral, Michelle Obama was one of them. So I will quickly give you my opinion based on my information, my research, and where it has pointed me in the past, what it has shown me in the past. I'm not going to take the time to flesh all this out with the names, places, and dates because we're reading through Illuminati Unmasked. But Barack Obama was for his presidency, a sexually traumatized puppet and pawn of the CIA and ultimately the Vatican. Based not just on what Joan Rivers said, but other evidence that I've seen, I do believe Michelle Obama's transgender. And I also believe that the Obama presidency provided tremendous mirth and laughter in the halls of the Vatican. But don't worry, Rome has controlled American government for long before Barack Obama became president, and has repeatedly committed crimes as bad or worse. Sidebar: was Joan Rivers a, quote, Illuminati sacrifice? Actually, I say Anne. Joan Rivers was 81 at the time of her death, and she was born in 1933. Pop-Tart Beyonce was born on the date of Rivers', quote, terrible accident, end quote, in 1981, and she is 33. Now, before you scoff, understand that numerology, astrology, and dates are critical to the Luciferian elite. My opinion, after Rivers marked herself for destruction, the Satanists quickly found the numbers they wanted and made it happen. Hat tip, Johnny's wife. Subheading: Assassination Central. As far as assassination goes, the OSS's Wild Bill Donovan was the mastermind behind one of the most infamous assassinations in United States history, the murder of General George S. Patton. An astonishing book by Robert K. Wilcox, Target Patton, lays out the conspiracy that holds Donovan at the front and Dwight David Eisenhower along with Omar Bradley at the top. Cox states that Donovan used the OSS and its assassin Douglas Bazata to utilize an unorthodox pneumatic gun that could shoot untraceable debris as projectiles at close range to wound Patton while being driven through Heidelberg, Germany in December of 1945. To everyone's surprise, despite terrible wounds, Patton started to recover in the hospital. His location and status was leaked to the Soviet spy agency, the NKVD, precursor to the KGB, and they finished him. Such cooperation between, quote, enemies, end quote, to kill a prominent patriotic American is a Jesuit calling card. Patton had seen the Soviet scourge firsthand, how the Red Army had raped, murdered, pillaged, and looted its way through Eastern Europe and half of Germany. He had also seen the shocking complicity between Washington and Moscow. Patton's anti-communist sentiments were making his superiors increasingly uncomfortable, as there had been much secret collusion between them. The prolonging of World War II and the empowering of the communist Soviet Union played right into Jesuit hands. Both the birthplace of the Reformation, Germany, and its most fertile growing fields, the United States and the United Kingdom, would continue to be punished. I next cite Tim Shipman of The Telegraph. Patton, who distrusted the Russians, believed Eisenhower wrongly prevented him closing the so-called Falaise Gap in the autumn of 1944, allowing hundreds of thousands of German troops to escape to fight again. This led to the deaths of thousands of Americans during the winter counteroffensive that became known as the Battle of the Bulge. In order to placate Stalin, the Third Army was also ordered to halt as it reached the German border and was prevented from seizing either Berlin or Prague, moves that could have prevented Soviet domination of Eastern Europe after the war. Back to the text. George Patton had seen it all from within the leadership inner circle. According to Wilcox, it was the threat from Patton that he would out America's leaders as traitors, as well as his towering character as a proven wartime leader that earned him a death sentence. What American would possibly be part of murdering our greatest battlefield general? One who owed his allegiance to Rome and not Washington. For repeatedly subverting American interests for papal priorities, William Donovan was lavishly rewarded even before the end of the Second World War. From the Catholic Encyclopedia, I note, in July of 1944, Pius XII awarded Donovan the Grand Cross of the Order of St. Sylvester, the oldest and most prestigious of papal knighthoods, and the highest Catholic award ever received by an American. Less than 100 men have received this award throughout history. The Order of St. Sylvester, notable members, 1944 July, Pius XII created Major General William Joseph Donovan, father of CIA Knight of the Grand Cross of the Order. Again, Order of St. Sylvester, the Order of Golden Militia under a new name. Prior to the year 1841, it was known as the Militia of the Golden Spur or Golden Militia. It undoubtedly is the oldest and, at one time, was one of the most prized of the papal orders. Back to the text. The garrote around the neck of America is the international banks led by the United States, quote, Central Bank, end quote, the so-called Federal Reserve, which is managed by the accountants of Rome, the Rothschilds. But the knives in America's back are her intelligence organizations, from the FBI to the NSA to the CIA. They are all clearly driven by a malignant authority that wishes to greatly harm the United States. Now, I close Chapter 3 with a citation from Stephen Mumford's American Democracy and the Vatican. It's no coincidence that some of the best anti-Vatican material is allowed to surface from far left or atheist sources, because it still serves the Vatican in the long run. If you can attack Jesus Christ and Christianity while simultaneously attacking the Vatican, you still win as a Roman. The ultimate goal is to make people question, certainly those who wish to be Christians, question the Bible, and needing an authority, turn to Rome. Mumford begins, the Catholic Church is the most divisive force in America. The March 19, 1984 issue of U.S. News and World Report examined 2 secret Catholic elite religious societies in this country. The Knights of Malta, with 1,000 U.S. members who are prominent in government, business, or professional life, and Opus Dei, with 3,000 members of widely varied backgrounds. The Knights of Malta organization dates back to the time of the Crusades. Its members include some of our nation's most prominent Catholics: CIA Director William Casey, William Wilson, Vernon Walters, Senators Denton and Domenici, Alexander Haig, William Sloan, and William F. Buckley, creator and leader of Young Americans for Freedom, from which a large portion of the Reagan administration team were drawn. Because many knights and recipients of the Order's honors have worked in or around the CIA, critics sometimes suggest a link between the two. The CIA has been dominated by the Catholic hierarchy. According to members, the Order serves, quote, as an international defender of the Church, end quote. In June of each year, a ceremony is held in Rome for Knights of Malta, which includes the swearing of allegiance and to the defense of the Holy Mother Church. Knights are committed to defending the Church. Only the most devout and obedient are invited to join the Knights in Opus Dei, which its detractors have compared to mind-controlling cults. It is inevitable that the best interests of the Vatican and those of the United States are not always going to be the same. For this reason, no one can possibly swear complete allegiance to both and mean it. The acts and attitudes of the Knights of Malta and the Reagan administration seem to reflect this complete allegiance to the Catholic Church rather than to our country. Consider the intensity of the commitment of these secret society members as, quote, international defenders of the Church, end quote. It is hardly a secret that one of the most important American advances in, quote, defending the Church, end quote, by Catholic elites was the creation of the Central Intelligence Agency. The activities of the CIA go far beyond intelligence gathering of an international nature. The CIA serves as an agency through which secret assistance to the Holy Mother Church can be provided by secret American society members, acting as her defenders. Mumford has a citation here. During the CIA's formative years, Protestants predominated. Somehow, however, Catholics wrested control of the CIA's Coven Action section. It was no coincidence that some of the agency's more grandiose operations were in Catholic countries of Latin America and the Catholic regime of South Vietnam. Back to Mumford. For creating the Office of Strategic Services, the wartime predecessor to the CIA, and this special arrangement with the Vatican, Mumford then has another citation. General William Wild Bill Donovan was decorated in July of 1944 by Pope Pius XII with the Grand Cross of the Order of St. Sylvester, the oldest and most prestigious of papal knighthoods. This award has been given to only 100 other men in history who, quote, by feat of arms or writings or outstanding deeds, have spread the faith and have safeguarded and championed the Church. Back to Mumford. Donovan did more to safeguard and champion the Catholic Church than any other American, and he was rewarded for his service with the highest Catholic award ever received by an American. No doubt thousands of others have striven with their deeds for similar recognition. Now, I do have an important footnote, and both in footnotes and endnotes, I'm a little bit more myself. Mumford is a flaming communist, absolutely bent on mass genocide to fix the lie of, quote, out-of-control population growth, end quote, and he laughably considers Rome as the enemy of both communism and genocide. And as a quick aside, that's how someone like Mumford gets published. Back to my footnote. But as the Luciferians have shown themselves to be too smart by half in attempting to control both sides of the Hegelian conflict, we will exploit Professor Mumford's research to our advantage. Chapter 4. War. What is it good for? Now again, I'm going to roll the dice on fair use because I cite the 2008 James Bond movie Quantum of Solace. And I'm going to play you that small clip because it's so powerful, but I guarantee you that the censors where this plays, especially on YouTube, will immediately flag the entire episode today. So the story behind this is Bond has been kicked out of MI6, disgraced, and he turns up at this small island villa of a character seen in the previous movie, Casino Royale, Renee Mathis, whom Bond thought should be tortured just to make sure he wasn't a double agent. And it turns out he wasn't, so they bought him the villa. I have to say I have enjoyed the Daniel Craig Bonds, even though, heck, back in the day, look, it's all psychological operation, but before I had taken any red pills, I had read all of Ian Fleming's books, so I was completely familiar with the character, and Daniel Craig basically looks nothing like the character. I don't know, well, there have been 4 movies so far. Of those 4 movies, at least 2 of them have been less ridiculous in the typical James Bond fashion, and a little bit more gritty and believable. And I liked Craig in that more gritty, realistic role and setting. The character of Mathis is played by Giancarlo Giannini. And they sit out on the terrace and have a glass of wine together, and Giannini is a little grizzled. He's got a little bit of 5 o'clock shadow. And so as a result, these lines are delivered in a way that is just phenomenal and so true.
I need a passport and matching credit card.
And MI6 ran out of plastic.
Well, oddly, right now, you're the only person I think I can trust.
That is odd. But I guess when one's young, it seems very easy to distinguish between right and wrong. But as one gets older, it becomes more difficult. The villains and the heroes get all mixed up.
Modern warfare between nation-states is an enterprise wholly manufactured by the Luciferian elite for 3 general purposes: to make obscene amounts of money, to slaughter the commoners and cull the, quote, useless eaters, unquote, to punish the enemies of Rome. Enemies have been created and crises have been contrived in order to motivate populations to give up rights and make drastic sacrifices for the elite that they would not normally make. Good Americans thank a soldier with no legs for endless deployments in the, quote, war on terror, end quote, to, quote, protect our freedoms, end quote, as they hold their hands up and surrender to be humiliated by a naked body scanner at the airport. And it's all by design. Subheading: the best enemies money can buy. How would it be possible for a man's company to be seized by the government for violating the Trading with the Enemy Act, having been caught sending goods directly to Nazi Germany during World War II, as well as having been implicated in a military coup attempt against Franklin Roosevelt, and yet have nothing happen to him? We have just described Yale Skull and Bones alum Connecticut Senator Prescott Bush, father of former CIA Director and Yale Skull and Bones alum George Herbert Walker Bush, also America's 41st president, and grandfather of Yale Skull and Bones alum George Walker Bush, America's 43rd president. Prescott Bush was directly implicated in empowering the Third Reich. With good reason does the CIA regularly recruit from Yale. Another prominent member of Yale's Skull and Bones Society is John Forbes Carey. In 2007, while on the campaign trail, Carey was asked a question at the University of Florida, Gainesville, that precipitated a violent response from school security. Video of the incident would go viral as the young man who asked Carey the question would cry out to campus security during his mishandling, "Don't tase me, bro."
I first and foremost want to thank you for your time. You spent a lot of time talking to us here today. I want to thank you for coming and being open and honest. You recommended a book to us earlier. I wanted to recommend a book to you. It's called Art Madhouse by Greg Palast.
Yeah, I haven't actually.
Yeah, he's the top investigative journalist in America.
I've already read it.
And he says you won the 2004 election.
Right.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? You won in 2004. In fact, there were multiple reports on the day of the election of disenfranchisement of black voters in Florida and Ohio.
So what's the question?
Well, that's my question. I'm going to preface it. He's been talking for 2 hours. I think I can have 2 minutes. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to ask you my question. I'm going to inform people, and then I'm going to ask you my question. So there are multiple reports of disenfranchisement of black voters on the day of the election, 2004.
Right.
There was also voting machines, electronic voting machines in Volusia County, Florida, that counted backwards. So amidst all these reports of phony, bogus stuff going on, how could you concede the election on the day? How could you concede the 2004 election on the day? When in this book it says there were 5 million votes that were suppressed and you won the election. Didn't you want to be president? I'm not even done yet. I have 2 more questions. If you were so against Iran, how come you're not saying, let's impeach Bush now? Impeach Bush now before we can invade Iran. Why don't we impeach him? Impeach Bush. Clinton was impeached for what? Why don't we impeach Bush? All right? Also, were you a member of Skull and Bones in college with Bush? Were you in the same secret society?
That's all right. Let me answer his question.
Excuse me, were you arrested? Whoa. Is anybody watching this? I'm not doing this.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
Oh my goodness, does it get any better? Greetings and welcome back to Resistance Rising with Johnny Cirucci. I am your host, Johnny Cirucci, on the program that gives you news and commentary that will set you free, information you just will not get anywhere else. And we're currently reading through my first book, Illuminati Unmasked, and I'm taking all kinds of liberties, air quotes, liberties.
Quotes, unquotes, and quotes.
With original source material so you can get directly what I'm talking about. And I really hope to be able to use these tracks that I'm creating for a future audio version of Illuminati Unmasked. And I really am going to have to check to make absolutely sure that I don't get into trouble for what is clearly fair use in giving you this original material. But for now, we should be okay here. Of course, as this goes up on YouTube, expect the doors to slam shut. I used to have so much fun making episodes of Resistance Rising. I would spend, no exaggeration, a week on a single episode. And I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it and didn't get a penny back from it. So I just I had to walk away. It's just a matter of expending resources. And I always know the trolls when they come in, starting off like Ka, the Jungle Book snake. Oh, Johnny, you're really so good at what you do. But all those extra sound effects and sound bites and music clips and movie clips on your show, they're really annoying. I could really do without them. Meanwhile, it's the best part of the show. It's the most entertaining part of the show and the most fun that I had putting the show together. I am paying Blog Talk Radio to maintain all the old shows. So grab them while you can, and please help yourself to download and re-upload, but good luck. They have been savaged. I used to also pay Spreaker to automatically upload episodes of Resistance Rising to YouTube, and they're all instantly demonetized.
Quotes, unquotes, and quotes.
And fully, at least a third of them have been blocked and or deleted outright. You'll never get to hear them on You Screwed. Just one more example of truth doesn't pay. Back to the text. Although many Americans are familiar with what happened to student Andrew William Meyer, very few know what it was that caused him to be immediately subdued. Meyer had asked Carrie about his involvement in Skull and Bones. Pause as a quick aside. Wikipedia, which is supposedly user-edited.
Quotes, unquotes, and quotes.
notes that Andrew Meyer is now quite conservative in his ideology, which is fascinating because, number one, I imagine that with the last name of Meyer, M-E-Y-E-R, there's probably some Jewish derivation which makes him very useful to the Roman machine. But if you were listening to the question, you finally got the entire context of what was going on. It sure seemed like Meyer was a typical far-left, anti-war student, asking John Forbes Carey why he wasn't true to his ideology. And the weird thing about it is that I'm speaking as a former Marine, a former soldier who's been to war himself. When you get to the truth and you see how contrived all war is, there's a fantastic opportunity for real right to meet real left. Maybe that's what happened with Andrew Meyer. Back to the text. In the 2004 presidential election, America was given the electoral choice between John Forbes Carey, Yale Skull and Bones 66, and George Walker Bush, Yale Skull and Bones 68. Enough heads were being turned that CBS News risked a report on the subject. Correspondent Rebecca Lung interviewed Alexandra Robbins, author of Secrets of the Tomb, who remarked, "Skull and Bones is so tiny, that's what makes this staggering," says Robbins. "There are only 15 people, and I add, who get tapped a year, which means there are about 800 living members at any one time. But a lot of bonesmen have gone on to positions of great power, which Robbins says is the main purpose of this secret society, to get as many members as possible into positions of power. They do have many individuals in influential positions," says Robbins, "and that's why this is something that we need to know about. President Bush has tapped 5 fellow bonesmen to join his administration. Most recently, he selected William Donaldson, Skull and Bones 1953, to be the head of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Like the president, he's taken the Bones oath of silence." Back to the text. During that campaign, NBC journalist Tim Russert asked both candidates at different appearances on his Meet the Press about the affiliation, which they both quickly dodged. Russert died 4 years later at the young age of 58 of a heart attack, although his physician, Dr. Michael Newman, stated Russert's coronary artery disease was well under control via medication and exercise. Those exact words were used to describe Andrew Breitbart's physical condition before his heart attack. Breitbart was only 43 years old and on the verge of announcing very damaging information regarding Barack Obama's past. Shortly after the autopsy, Breitbart's coroner, Michael Cormier, died of arsenic poisoning. Subheading: Follow the money. War is business, and wherever the United States military has been sent, elites within the superclass have made astonishing, if despicable, profits. The German chemical company Interessengemeinschaft Farbenindustrie, IG Farben, was a powerful entity before and during World War II. Farben was the maker of Zyklon B, the gas that slaughtered many concentration camp victims, Jews, Christians, homosexuals, gypsies. It was also an organization that invested heavily in the Third Reich. Baer and BASF are names many Americans recognize today. Those companies enabled the Third Reich, and Adolf Hitler utilized their help in attaining critical synthetic forms of rubber and oil, as well as contributing several 100,000 Reichsmarks to the Nazi Party. IG Farben was a key player behind the Holocaust. I next cite holocaustresearch.org. After a contract was initiated by a March 2, 1942 contract with IG Farben Industrie, AG Auschwitz, the synthetic rubber and oil plant at Dowry, near Auschwitz-Monowitz, which provided forced labor, was under construction in November 1943. The Buna chemical plant produced synthetic oil and rubber from coal, which was the beginning of SS activity in camps in this location during the Holocaust. At its peak in 1944, this factory made use of 83,000 slave laborers. The pesticide Zyklon B, for which IG Farben held the patent, was manufactured by Degesch, Deutsche Gesellschaft für Schadensbekämpfung, which IG Farben owned 42.2% of in shares, and which had IG Farben managers in its managing committee. Today, the plant operates as Dowry SA. Back to the text. You would intuitively expect Farben to have been severely punished by the Allies after the war, but that did not happen. More from HolocaustResearch.org. After the defeat of the Third Reich at the International Military Tribunal held in Nuremberg, the United States, as the occupying power, conducted trials against the top officials of three major industrial concerns, Krupp, Flick, and IG Farben. All the defendants were acquitted of the first count. 9 were found guilty of the second. Crouch, Fritzer Meer, the board member responsible for the entire Buna production, Ambros, Budafich, and Durfeld were found guilty of the third. The IGF plants located in the Soviet zone of occupation were nationalized. However, in the zones occupied by the Western powers, no change of ownership took place. Basically, the conglomerate was broken up into its original 3 major components, Bayer, BASF, and Host, whose balance sheet by the end of the 1950s already exceeded that of the original IGF. Back to the text. A former IG Farben salesman would later rise to be one of the most powerful men in the world, perhaps not by coincidence. Here I cite Behold a Pale Horse by Milton William Cooper. In the early 1940s, the IG Farben Chemical Company employed a Polish salesman who sold cyanide to the Nazis for use in Auschwitz. The same salesman also worked as a chemist in the manufacture of the poison gas. After the war, the salesman, fearing for his life, joined the Catholic Church and was ordained a priest in 1946. One of his closest friends was Dr. Wolf Sumnes, the mastermind behind the November 78 to October 79 and March 80, October 81 experimental hepatitis B vaccine trials conducted by the Center for Disease Control in New York, San Francisco, and 4 other American cities that loosed the plague of AIDS upon the American people. The salesman was ordained Poland's youngest bishop in 1958. After a 30-day reign, his predecessor was assassinated, and our ex-cyanide gas salesman assumed the papacy as Pope John Paul II. In 1990, as the right time with the right leaders, ex-chief of the Soviet secret police, Mikhail Gorbachev, ex-chief of the CIA, George Bush, ex-Nazi cyanide gas salesman, Pope John Paul II, all bound by an unholy alliance to bring in the New World Order. Back to the text. Host AG is another dark company, and their latest invention is abortion in a bottle. A pill that will kill an unborn child before there is need to go to a Planned Parenthood clinic. However, what is less well publicized are the terrible after effects, like a woman being unable to pass the body of her dead child, and life-threatening infections resulting, or serious internal bleeding occurring. Truly sick minds are responsible for the drug's name, RU486. Subheading: We have met the enemy, and he works on Wall Street. Economist, historian, and writer, Hoover Institute fellow Dr. Anthony Sutton, 1925 to 2002, found that the American IG Board of Directors held some interesting interlocks with other powerful companies. Carl Bosch, Ford Motor; Edsel Ford, Ford Motor; H.A. Metz, director of IG Farben in Germany and Bank of Manhattan; C.E. Mitchell, director of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and National City Bank; Walter Teagle, U.S. director of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and Standard Oil of New Jersey. Dr. Sutton noted that Walter Teagle and Standard Oil helped keep the German war effort afloat almost single-handedly. Standard Oil was founded by John David Rockefeller. Subheading: Skull and Boned. The Bush family have been elite power players in American politics for generations, and they have been vetted by the Yale Skull and Bones Secret Society. Secret societies are gateways to power for the elite, initiating them into a literal Luciferian agenda and blackmailing them with sexual, sadistic, and satanic rituals. Next, from Kevin Phillips of the LA Times, the Bush's ties to John David Rockefeller and Standard Oil go back 100 years when Rockefeller made Buckeye steel castings wildly successful by convincing the railroads that carried their oil to buy heavy equipment from Buckeye. George H. Walker helped refurbish the Soviet oil industry in the 1920s, and Prescott Bush acquired experience in the international oil business as a 22-year director of Dresser Industries. George H.W. Bush in turn worked for Dresser and ran his own offshore oil drilling business, Zapata Offshore. George W. Bush mostly raised money for the investors for oil businesses that failed. Currently, the family's oil focus is principally in the Middle East. Back to the text. Attached to elite families like the Bushes are perennial apparatchiks that roam the halls of power regardless of who the figurehead is. Two such men are Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney, chief architects behind the so-called War on Terror. By 2011, the War on Terror killed 225,000 human beings, with 365,000 wounded, to include 6,000 of America's sons, as well as owing a $5 trillion debt. That breaks down to each American owing $16,000. Today, the military-industrial complex has direct access into the veins of Lady Liberty. The following citation from the New York Times. The Halliburton Company, the Dallas oil services company bedeviled lately by an array of accounting and business issues, is benefiting very directly from the United States' efforts to combat terrorism. From building cells for detainees at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba to feeding American troops in Uzbekistan, the Pentagon is increasingly relying on a unit of Halliburton called KBR, sometimes referred to as Kellogg, Brown, and Root. Although the unit has been building projects all over the world for the federal government for decades, the attacks of September 11th have led to significant additional business. The government business has been well-timed for Halliburton, whose stock price has tumbled almost two-thirds in the last year because of concerns about its asbestos liabilities, sagging profits in its energy business, and an investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission into its accounting practices back when Vice President Dick Cheney ran the company. Below this I have a picture of Gerald Ford, Donald Rumsfeld, and Dick Cheney. The caption reads, Gerald Ford, who spied on the Warren Commission as a member and fed intelligence back to Lyndon Baines Johnson and J. Edgar Hoover, stands with his Chief of Staff Donald Rumsfeld and Assistant Chief of Staff Dick Cheney on 28 April 1975. Back to the text. Anthony Sutton wrote exhaustively on how secret societies conspired with Wall Street to empower America's greatest enemies. In the introduction to his work, America's Secret Establishment, Dr. Sutton names names. We trace the extraordinary Skull and Bones influence in a major Hegelian conflict, Nazism versus communism. Skull and Bones members were in the dominant decision-making positions, Bush, Harriman, Stimson, Lovett, and so on, all Bonesmen, and instrumental in guiding the conflict through use of right and left. They financed and encouraged the growth of both philosophies and controlled the outcome to a significant extent. This was aided by the reductionist division in science, the opposite of historical wholeness. By dividing science and learning into narrower and narrower segments, it became easier to control the whole through the parts. Pause. As a quick aside, you will never read the words Catholic, Vatican, or Jesuit in Anthony Sutton's work. Back to the text. Not only did Prescott Bush get away with high treason repeatedly, but two successive generations of Bushes ruled over America from the White House, with more on the way. To those who rule on behalf of their benefactors to harm and enslave America, it's all a big game. The names change each round, but they still stay the same. And to the right of this paragraph, I have a picture of Richard Nixon, the puppet and toy of Prescott Bush. with the caption, Prescott Sheldon Bush and his protege, Richard Milhouse Nixon. I then cite Steve Holland of Reuters. Never mind the potential for name fatigue. Former United States President George W. Bush likes the idea of a 2016 presidential matchup between his Republican brother, Jeb Bush, and Democrat Hillary Clinton. In an interview as part of the rollout of a book he has written about his father, former President George H.W. Bush, Bush said he is urging Jeb to try and make it 3 Bush presidents. Back to the text, the propaganda they receive from eager sycophants in the media is indescribable. This is from Mark McKinnon of the Daily Beast, headed, Why Hillary versus Jeb Would Be Great for America. They're both qualified, respectful of each other, shocker, and represent the vast majority of middle America. So what's not to like about another Clinton-Bush race for 2016? When you mention the prospect of Clinton versus Bush 2016, a funny thing happens. First, there is the reflexive response, oh no, not again, we don't need more dynastic politics in this country. But upon further reflection, you realize Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton would be a great race and actually good for the country. Back to the text. The Bushes and Clintons, quote, represent middle America, quote, the way Louis XIV and Marie Antoinette represented the French peasantry. They would be good for the country, the way Jack Kevorkian was good for his patients. When we catch them cavorting and having fun with each other on the golf course, after all the harm they've done, we're supposed to be surprised. This is from Tessa Brenson of Time, titled, George W. Bush says Bill Clinton is his, quote, brother from another mother, unquote. An unlikely bromance. Former Presidents George W. Bush and Bill Clinton broadcast their unlikely bromance on social media Tuesday when Clinton posted a picture of himself reading Bush's new book. Clinton's How Are You Still Not on Twitter hashtag is a reference to his President's Day tweet this year, which ribbed the younger Bush for not having an account. This time, Bush responded. He posted Clinton's tweet on Instagram with the caption, Thanks, 42. Hope you like the book about your pal, 41. How are you still not on Instagram? Presidential grammars, brother from another mother hashtags. This is not the first public display of affection between the two former presidents. Clinton often refers to himself as the black sheep son of the Bush family, and Bush challenged Clinton to the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge earlier this year. Their bipartisan friendship is all the more remarkable given that Clinton beat Bush's father, President George H.W. Bush, in the 1992 election, ousting Bush Sr. after only one term in office. Back to the text. It was the CIA who built an empire for the Bushes and Clintons on a mountain of cocaine. This could only be possible if a malignant international agency were at work pulling the strings. A subheading. The Fourth Reich. The worst political plagues of modernity, from Nazism to communism, were birthed by the Society of Jesus. I'm quoting from Emmanuel Josephson. Wherever a totalitarian movement erupts, whether communist or Nazi, a Jesuit can be found in the role of advisor or leader. Back to the text. Adolf Hitler's tour de force, Mein Kampf, was so heavily edited by a vehemently anti-Semitic Jesuit priest, it was practically ghostwritten by him. Otto Strasser was a figure key in the Nazi Party of the 1930s. During Adolf Hitler's brief stint in prison, Strasser's brother Gregor shared rulership of the party with Gottfried Feder. It was an unhappy partnership, with the Strasser brothers emphasizing the socialist part of the National Socialist Party, inasmuch as they pushed for urbanization of the commoners and state control of the land. They were true Luciferian visionaries, and their efforts would later be renewed under United Nations Agenda 21. Strasser would write an expose on his time with Adolf Hitler titled Hitler and I. In it, he made the astounding statement that Mein Kampf was a chaotic mess of rants that was completely reorganized by a Jesuit priest. He says, in its original form, Mein Kampf was a veritable hodgepodge of commonplaces, schoolboy reminiscences, personal opinions, expressions of personal animosity. The whole was written in the style of a fifth-form schoolboy, and not very intelligent on top of that. Only a single chapter, if I am to believe Father Stamfel, who twice revised the entire manuscript, was really original. This was the chapter on propaganda. Good Father Stempfel, a priest of great learning, editor of a paper at Maisbach, spent months rewriting and editing Mein Kampf. He eliminated the more flagrant inaccuracies and the excessively childish platitudes. Hitler never forgave Father Stempfel for getting to know his weaknesses so well. He had him murdered by a special death squad on the night of June 30th, 1934. Wikipedia Deutsch confirms this. Bernard Stempfel, S.J., Father Bernard Rudolf Stempfel, 17 April 1882, Munich, to 1 July 1934 in the Dachau concentration camp near Munich. Pseudonyms: Redivius, Spectator Germanae, was a German religious theologian and publicist. He was especially known as the editor of the anti-Semitic newspaper Maisbacher Anzeiger. The research part accepted that he was an important employee of Adolf Hitler's book Mein Kampf. The existence of the anti-Semitic magazine Maisbacher Anzeiger is confirmed via the Essays of German Jewish Studies. Well, it looks like I'm against the top of the hour, so we're going to stop here. If you want more, you're going to have to come back.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on satellite, internet, or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.